Minerals are often underrated. They are the spark plugs for any key enzymatic reactions to take place in the body as it pertains to digestion, reproductive health, menstrual health, cognitive function. Like, we don't know how important these guys are. Unfortunately, they can easily become depleted um, by the stress.
Hello and welcome to the PCOS Oracle podcast, Kiara. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me on this episode. And I'm super excited to talk about the topic that we will be delving into, about the metabolism and how the health of metabolism, or specifically how we feed our mitochondria, can affect our fertility. So I can't wait till we delve into all that good stuff, which I'm sure will be super valuable to our listeners and will certainly learn so much. But before we get into the topic of our interview, can you share with our listeners your journey and how you came about educating and coaching women about health, hormones, the metabolism, fertility, etc.?
Yes, of course. Well, first, thank you for having me on the podcast, Espina. I am really excited to dive into this topic as well. So how I got into things, I think just like every other practitioner, we kind of fell into this space. I had no idea what alternative health was. I grew up raised to go to my doctor if something was wrong. So that's exactly what happened in 2016. There just came a point where my digestion was just so bad. I thought I had an intestinal blockage or I had a phantom pregnancy or something was going on. I was like, I need help. And I almost sought help from like a research hospital. I really thought I was this complicated case, and never would I have thought that this would expand into my career. And so yeah, my health journey, just like really bad digestive issues, low thyroid, which was never diagnosed. I was always borderline, and there was nothing to be done about it. Just like, we'll keep an eye on it, and that's all. So I just stayed the path and ran all the tests that we could, and then finally I fortunately did have a primary care physician who led me to functional medicine and was like, we can only do so much, like, why don't you check out this type of medicine? And I was really grateful for that, because that is definitely what started my journey and started like catapulted me to lead me to do my own research. And then I spent hours and hours and hours on good old Google researching my symptoms and stumbling across leaky gut and just like holistic medicine. And then I, went on Instagram and found out that you could be like a practitioner helping others like do the same thing. So that led me to the Nutritional Therapy Association and helping women do heal their bodies and heal their metabolism, increase their metabolic rate, focus on digestion and hormones. And most recently I have like kind of shifted gears towards fertility, because at one point in my healing journey, they did inform me that, and I think, it was, if I had known more about hormones then, I probably would have not felt this way then. But one of my only dreams was like to become a mom, and my Dutch test had revealed that I had zero progesterone, zero testosterone, and a whole lot of estrogen. And that wasn't the ideal space for a baby to be held in. So my functional medicine practitioner told me, she's like, even if you wanted to get pregnant right now, I don't think that you could sustain a pregnancy. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, like my body doesn't feel good, so I'm not surprised. But I think that just motivated me even more to heal my body. And that is exactly what I did. So here we are today.
Amazing. I feel like you said, when people become practitioners, coaches, and support women, educate them, it generally does kind of stem from what people have gone through, and they kind of want to prevent people from going down the same path and like give them solid and research backed and just truthful information, and just not give them medicine or a pill, which is not to say that medicine obviously it's not helpful, obviously.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's we have to be kind of careful in what direction you go too much down, because obviously sometimes a lot of us think supplements are going to like treat everything. We take every single supplement that is available to us and just, just take everything without knowing the extent that this supplement can do and whatnot. So I definitely think, it's important to find a balance.
It's important. Yeah, I think Western medicine does have a time and place, and supplements, the functional medicine sphere can easily become Western medicine if you just expect a supplement to take care of all of your symptoms. So the goal is to use supplementation accordingly and conservatively in my own practice, and to be able to get to where you need to be and support the body in a way that will help still like get to the root cause of things, which we will talk about the root cause of things, because I think we could be on a goose hunt for the root cause if we don't understand this concept.
Yeah, for sure. And also like what you touched on about how when you went to the doctor and they never really diagnosed a thyroid problem, I feel like thyroid conditions are really like underdiagnosed. Obviously there's a very a large difference between what is, I guess, healthy and what standard Western doctors like GPs and would see as a healthy kind of thyroid levels. But also when you go to a GP, general practitioner, don't tend to look at like the full thyroid. They just look at like TSH and T4 maybe, and that's like literally not enough.
Picture. And then you're looking at different ranges as well. There tend to be tighter margins in functional medicine. So like what's optimal, because they're looking at the population as a whole as what's healthy. Unfortunately, a lot of the population is not healthy. And so what may be normal is common and not optimal. So there's a big difference, and there's a lot of nuance to it. But I also believe that sometimes a full thyroid panel, I think maybe someone should get it if they have access to labs, etc. But I also am a big fan of the hair tissue meta-analysis and basal body temperature. I think Dr. Britta Barnes has painted the picture for us that these labs, the blood work is fairly new to medicine and doesn't really capture what's truly going on a cellular level. So a lot of women are coming to me with low basal body temperatures indicative of really low thyroid, a really low metabolic rate, same with their pulses. And then if you're working with the hair tissue meta-analysis, you are seeing what's going on with your thyroid ratio on a cellular level, which is your calcium to potassium ratio. So yeah, very interesting stuff.
Definitely. So as I mentioned, I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I feel like fertility is often something many of us think about when we want to conceive, instead of something that we should be thinking about long before we decide to, if you want to have a family, obviously. So I was just looking through some statistics on fertility and just some quick facts just for our listeners. An estimated 15% of couples will have trouble conceiving. This was UCLA Health of 2020. Globally, 48.5 million couples experience infertility. About 9% of men and 10% of women aged 15 to 44 reported infertility problems in the United States. So it's like 30% of infertility cases can be attributed solely to the female, 30% can be attributed solely to the male, and 30% can be attributed to a combination of both partners, and 10% of cases have an unknown cause. Fertility Awareness 2020. So we hear so much of like how fertility is really like taking a pretty much like a nosedive for both like genders, and it's applicable to both women. It's not just like a female thing where we think, oh, it's just a female's problem that fertility is your fault if you can't conceive, it's a woman's fault. And it's not the case. It's obviously both sexes that need to address specific aspects of fertility health. So according to a Single Cares Infertility Survey, 25% of couples do not know the cause of their fertility problems. So as our listeners know, PCOS, which is like predominantly what I talk about on the podcast, is one of the leading causes of infertility in women. But let's delve into the deeper reasons, those root causes, which is what our podcast episode is all about. So, obviously we've been touching on metabolism and mineral balance, and guess mitochondria and metabolic health. So I think it might be a good idea to touch or distinguish between the mitochondria, which is so the mitochondria is the power stations of the cell which convert nutrients into energy, and then the metabolism deals with the chemical processes that occur within a living organism. So let's delve into what the mitochondria, the metabolism, has to do with fertility, egg quality.
Yes, it's a very large topic. There is a lot to really go into, and I just want to like back it up with all the statistics you were sharing. And it's, to me, I think anyone should conceive however they want to conceive. I just want everyone to be aware of the fact that it's not an unknown cause like 99% of the time. There are a lot of different factors that go into fertility and like going into the mitochondria, the health of the mitochondria and mineral status, and like what is really the root cause of infertility. So when I see women who have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, first, like there are a couple like qualifying questions, like how did you get that diagnosis? Because there are, there's a lot of misdiagnosing and like, did they just come off the pill? Like things like that. I often see that, but we know that PCOS is a metabolic syndrome, and it's not just a matter of like going low carb to heal PCOS because of the insulin resistance that women experience and weight gain, but also a lot of women may experience PCOS while not having weight gain. So they might go underdiagnosed, like, oh, you don't have PCOS because you don't have insulin resistance and you don't look to appear overweight, things like that. So when it comes to the quality of the egg and making sure that you're supporting the health of the mitochondria, regardless if you have PCOS or any condition, because I truly believe, and I went through the Root Cause Protocol Institute with Morley Robbins, and I love how he has put it into perspective for us. He says, I think this is like our first call together. He said that there's no such thing as a medical diagnosis, only metabolic dysfunction. And to me, from my eyes, it gives my clients hope. Like, oh, like I don't have to label myself as something. I don't have to really abide by like a PCOS diet or PCOS nutrition and things like that. And of course, like, there are certain foundations for everyone to follow, and maybe they're like, not every body is the same and everyone's in a different stage of life. But when we take that away from us, we really just focus on supporting the human body, the female body as a whole. And we know, again, there are certain parameters that have to be in place in order to really optimize fertility. So I don't say that to offend anyone or like, say like, oh, like you don't have PCOS or whatever. Like I very much was diagnosed with IBS, and I was diagnosed with leaky gut and estrogen dominance and all these things. And then I realized I started creating an identity for myself out of these labels. And sometimes it can be helpful to just take a step back and say, it almost gives you like power to have more control over your health and take responsibility for it, because that this can be corrected, that this can be fixed, and you don't need metformin, you don't need whatever drugs so that you can reverse the condition. It really is a huge lifestyle approach. And before we dive into it, I really want everyone to understand that it's not just nutrition. It's so many different factors that you really need to look at in your life. How did you get here? You didn't happen to get here overnight. Like these symptoms appeared over a very long period of time, and you really need to know your story. So like one of my roles as a practitioner is to be able to paint that story for my client, really taking it back to childhood and going into the health of their parents, or that's not even childhood, that's preconception, the health of their parents at conception, in utero, at birth, postpartum, what did you see growing up, and how did you process that? Did you process that? When we look at trauma, it's like the whatever emotion that wasn't processed and is now stuck inside of your body, kind of just trying to make a home out of it and doesn't have anywhere else to go. And so then symptoms start to appear. So when we talk about the egg quality mitochondria, we really want to make sure that first and foremost, yes, good nutrition habits are in place and lifestyle factors are in place, but really knowing like how you got here, what stress caused you to become infertile, what stress is there for you to not ovulate each month. You know, there's something there. And I think a lot of women might see themselves as like, I'm not stressed, like life is good, I have a good partner, and I am, work is good, things like that. But are they fulfilled? Are they full of joy? Are they, I don't know. I feel like the three H's of good fertility are like happy, horny, and hungry, or like I don't know what order it is, but like, do you feel that way? Do you actually feel that way? So I think that step number one is just really focusing on the depleters of why can't you retain nutrients, or why are you burning through them so quickly? Like what is going on internally, externally? Because when we also think of stress, yes, we look at trauma, like past trauma, also intergenerational trauma. Are you carrying someone else's trauma? But also like nutritional stress, chemical stress, electromagnetic stress. I always talk to my clients about how we have never in our human existence been exposed to so many stressors in our lives. Blue light, like it's everywhere. And of course, like the goal is to not escape these things. Like we want to be a part of society. We want to be able to have community and things like that. But how can we find our rhythm so that we're not completely void of these things, but also establishing a boundary for ourselves and using our discernment, like, is this serving us, is this not serving us? And sometimes that can be really hard, especially in such an overwhelming world. We have heaps and heaps of stress on our plate, especially as women. So I think we often blame women because they're the ones who are carrying the baby. And I mean, not blame women, but like it must be her, kind of thing. But I don't want to just talk about egg quality today. I want to talk about sperm quality, and like you need sufficient amounts of energy for optimal sperm function. And we know that EMFs deplete sperm, their quality as well as the quantity of sperm count. I think there was a study done once where it was like a male had a laptop on his lap for 15 minutes and the sperm quantity decreased by 75% in just 15 minutes. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is so incredible, yet so frightening at the same time.
Like obviously, not a lot of people know about how just having a laptop on you on your knees, like around that area, can really damage your sperm count, quantity, quality, all this kind of stuff. So I feel like this is kind of stuff that needs to be put out there so people can take care of their fertility health.
Yeah, I think when you go see, I mean, I don't know, I've never seen a fertility doctor or someone, a specialist. I often just, see the movies and like, it's the way your pelvis is tipped, like your uterus is, something's wrong with it. And like, that's why you can't carry a baby. And, that might be true too. Like, I think pelvic floor work is also really important in trying to conceive. But at the same time, there are so many other factors that we need to be asking our patients, clients, like how much sunlight are you getting daily? Are you laughing on a regular basis? Yeah, how often are you sitting down at your computer and hunched over and typing away and like staring at the screens past sunset and waking up and you're unrested and you're just you might not feel stressed, but your body feels stress. And I think in order to conceive, a really wonderful book that I highly recommend everyone getting if you're trying to conceive, or just, yeah, I guess like if you are trying to conceive, that's the whole point of it. Oh, it's called Awakening Fertility. And it's so beautiful. Like the wisdom that's inside of there just brings it all together. Like, yes, food is important and you need to be eating all the right things, but like your body needs to feel safe to want to have a baby. And if someone's not even trying to conceive, like your body needs to feel safe to ovulate. We know that fertility itself is just a key sign of overall health. So it doesn't matter who you are, like your body as a woman wants to procreate. It's in your biology. So you need to be supporting that. So I think if that kind of just like brings that together, is you need to figure out like where the stress in your life is coming from before you can really begin supporting your mitochondria and egg quality and sperm quality and stuff. Like figure out if it's chemical, electromagnetic, mold, birth control, nutritional stress, emotional stress. Are you in a toxic relationship? Like so many things, because your bucket is leaky and you need to make sure that bucket is sealed. But if you really want to see progress in your fertility. So yeah, that kind of just wraps up stress. But I also think that, so that's like kind of the depleters, right? The depleters of mineral status. So that's kind of what I really want to talk about today, because I think minerals are often underrated. They are the spark plugs for any key enzymatic reactions to take place in the body as it pertains to digestion, reproductive health, menstrual health, cognitive function. Like we don't know how important these guys are. Unfortunately, they can easily become depleted by the stress. And one stressor I forgot to mention is iron overload or iron dysregulation. Is this something that you talk about in your practice or in your business?
Yes, everyone obviously thinks that we need to be supplementing with iron, but we're actually kind of in iron overload, and taking in iron is just making things worse and causing issues with copper. So, I mean, like that's a lot of like supplements that women who are pregnant or who are told to take like iron. It's just like, that's another kind of question of like, we'll touch on later, but like women are kind of like recommended to take of like prenatals. And so it's just like, there's so many things I feel like we kind of need to like touch on people like know, or like what things are making things worse and not really fixing things and just causing more kind of imbalance. I feel like taking in a mineral or vitamin, things don't work like on their own, it kind of work together. So if we take more of one thing, we're kind of like depleting another thing or causing one thing to become in excess, and then that excess can cause a whole host of other kind of problems. So it's like,
Yeah.
you have to be really careful when taking supplements like pill kind of form, and not focusing on just kind of working more so to get it through diet, nutrition, because then at least you're not, it's kind of hard to get in excess of something when you're just kind of eating the food.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And perfectly made as nature intended. And I just, I don't know. I see it as like just coming from Western medicine. I think it might be just a response, like, give me something, I want to feel better, kind of thing. I want to make sure like the intention is there. I want to make sure that I'm supporting my body as I carry a baby. And I want to make sure my baby's healthy and, just not, there are no complications or anything like that. So the intention is there, but unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation, because I think everyone should do their own research, and some people might not be ready. And I always tell my clients, like, I want to support you in whatever way makes you feel safe. If that means getting on an iron free prenatal, if that is what is going to make you feel safe, here's what I know. Let me share that with you. And if we can't do that, then I will like just ask them to, do whatever makes them feel safe. And maybe they're working with their doctor or their midwife or someone, and they're also communicating with them, and they're just going with what their intuition is telling them. I want them to do that. So I personally would not take a prenatal because of what I know, and it's just like what I feel comfortable with. I have a really good foundation with nutrition. I eat like 4 ounces of beef liver a week. I get my oysters in weekly. We're working on my mineral status. We're working on my mineral status, but I don't feel like I need that. And I was asked this question once before on a live, and I personally don't think I will take any supplements like that whenever I do become pregnant. But kind of like going back to the beginning of the conversation with iron overload, that is a stressor, and kind of connecting it to copper and magnesium too. Like that's also something I learned inside of the RCP, that oxidative stress from iron overload can cause magnesium loss. So for me, my magnesium burn rate was really, really high. And our magnesium burn rate, for those who don't know, is just like at the rate at which we, I mean, it's in the name, I have burn magnesium. And everyone is going to, fluctuate because we have different oxidation statuses and stuff. I'm personally a slow metabolizer, so I tend to burn through more magnesium, and then sodium, potassium tend to be lower. But maybe you're a fast oxidizer and you're burning through sodium, potassium much faster than you are magnesium, and so forth. But you don't, it's also like, is it at a loss or is that a deficiency? Either way, you need some support. So magnesium is responsible for like 3,700 enzymatic reactions in the body. And if we're not supporting that, we are likely deficient, because our soil is void of magnesium today, unfortunately, unless you're like going to a regenerative farm or something. But our food is severely lacking magnesium. There are a few foods that you could probably integrate that are probably, supportive in the process, to have a little magnesium in there if you're just easing into this process, because I often see a lot of women just jumping straight into magnesium supplementation. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we can make, especially if you don't know your mineral status. I find that more often than not, we need to be focusing on our sodium, potassium. I mean, how many women are coming to you really exhausted, tired, fatigued, and overwhelmed, and just like don't know how to respond to stress? They're not resilient to it. So having, I like to refer to our vitality minerals as sodium and potassium. This is like your battery pack, if you will. And if you're not charging your battery pack, like those guys are going to be really low. And then you're living in a world that's telling you to stay away from fruit. You're living in a world that's telling you to stay away from salt. And so a lot of us are fearful of those things. So we're not eating those things, and we're not supporting our mineral status. And that has a lot to do with blood sugar balance, has a lot to do with thyroid function. And those are two key foundations that need to be in place prior to thinking about conceiving, to be honest. So yeah, it all connects. And I think having a hair tissue mineral analysis can be really helpful in someone's journey. Maybe it's not the first thing they do, but I think that it could be a useful tool later on down the road when they're ready for it.
So what other kind of minerals would a woman have to look at, or a man? So we've touched on magnesium, sodium, potassium, obviously copper, and iron as well. What are the key ones you think, I guess, women should start thinking about, or if they do decide to do a hair tissue mineral analysis test, what should they be expecting to see?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I get questions of like, what is a hair tissue mineral analysis? So I guess for anyone, I mean, I'm assuming you talked about this on the podcast before, but for anyone who doesn't know what a hair tissue mineral analysis is, it is a sample of your hair, and it's at the root. So it's grabbing some tissue too. You snip it and you send it off to this lab, and they analyze your hair. They don't wash it, at least the lab that I use, trace elements. And then in about like a few weeks, you have your results, and the results that you get back are broken down into a series of sections. So you have like your nutritional elements, some additional elements, your toxic elements. And then what's really important here is to look at everything in context. And I often get questions like, do you just run hair tissue mineral analyses? And like, the thing is, I need to know your story, because a hair test is going to really tell us about you. And I want you to understand like what we're looking at, because it's not going to make any sense. I'm like, oh yeah, like your magnesium's high, and like, I don't know where that stress is coming from. And like, if you were to look at it, it's just, we need to look at everything in context. So I'll run through the ratios really quickly. So the calcium and magnesium ratio is a blood sugar ratio, and this is going to tell us like if you're leaning more towards like hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. But of course, nothing that is said on the hair test is a diagnosis. Like there's no, it's not a diagnostic tool. I encourage those who are, using it, just take note of that, or either work with a practitioner like who can diagnose you, like a licensed doctor or someone that can diagnose you. But that, going back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation, like it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, like this is just giving you information about what's going on the cellular level, which is what matters. So you have your blood sugar ratio, important to see how well glucose is being utilized prior to conception, because otherwise, if you don't get this addressed, you could potentially end up with gestational diabetes. And, there are a lot of complications there. There are larger babies being born, potential tearing or C-section that you're looking at there. You're also setting up your baby's metabolic rate for life. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts that you can give to your child, is really having a strong preconception phase, like having, I think at the minimum a year, someone should be like preparing themselves for pregnancy or like conception. Ideally 2 to 3 years. And obviously this is going to depend on the background that you came from. Were you on birth control for 8-10 years? I mean, that's more common than not. Were you leading a really stressful lifestyle? Were you working 8 to 10 hours per day? Or more, like truth be told, I'm seeing women work like 14-hour days. And, what stress are you coming from? Like, how long is that really going to take for you to be able to replenish? So I think, focusing on your calcium and magnesium ratio, making sure that you don't have a calcium shell, making sure that your calcium's not low, making sure that it's being retained inside of the bones and in the teeth, not being pushed out into soft tissue, creating inflammation, and making sure that your magnesium burn rate is nice and healthy. And of course, I want to remind everyone that no one, at least that I've seen, is going to come back with everything in perfect standing. I think I would love to meet someone who's like in complete optimal health. And I don't know if that exists, to be honest. So I want everyone to like hold great grace for themselves and, just take everything with a grain of salt and just know that this is a journey. It's a wild ride. The sooner you get started, the better, obviously. But I mean, how to nourish yourself like throughout pregnancy, how to nourish yourself postpartum, and things will recalibrate. But you're greatly mitigating a lot of the potential symptoms that could come on during pregnancy and postpartum if you're starting to address this now. I think that's key. The next ratio is your thyroid ratio that I mentioned earlier, is calcium and potassium. So again, the diagnostic tool that we have in place right now at your doctor's office may not capture a full thyroid panel, or everything still might look normal, but on a cellular level, we know that things are running either low or everything's fast, which I kind of like still support the same way. I'm curious, Despina, did you have hypothyroidism?
I've never been like diagnosed with a kind of thyroid condition. What I do know is I had high thyroid antibodies, which when I was looking at my T3, TSH, one of those hormones, was obviously the longer that kind of inflammation was going on for, was obviously impacting those hormones. But from tests that I've done, no one's ever said that that's the only kind of thing in relation to the thyroid that I've had. But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So are those antibodies gone now?
I haven't tested yet. I'm going to do it in the next couple of months. But from symptoms, definitely I think they probably have gone down, because I've been feeling a lot like less inflammation kind of symptoms, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know what that feels. And that's kind of like going to my next statement is which like I don't think that lab testing is 100% necessary. Like retesting, especially because yes, it could be validating. It can just like just checking off the boxes. But sometimes it's like, do I feel better? Do I like have energy now? Are my moods better? Do I feel warmer? Things sound good. Like it just depends on someone's like mental capacity and how they handle and respond to lab tests, because I know a lot of people can get heady about things and they can start overthinking things and spiraling and things like that. But I think if you go into it, like I said at the beginning, going into it with the mindset of like, this is just information, this is data, and we are curious about it. That's all it is. This is not like a death sentence. This is not the end all or be all. So I think if you have that mindset, then I think lab testing is 100% like helpful. But in some instances, it could be the opposite, not helpful. But I think if someone is on a preconception journey, at least doing like an initial like intake of labs and just doing like a checkup on yourself, just as you would like going to your doctor's or OBGYN's office and like just getting a workup and making sure that everything is, you know, in good standing, things like that. Again, like I said, you're setting your baby up for life. Your imprint, your hormonal and thyroid imprints are going to baby. And you're also taking care of yourself postpartum, because you see so many women who are like struggling with postpartum depression or postpartum thyroiditis, or I'm trying to think, like their hair is falling out like crazy abnormal amounts. And you know, they just are, they're not happy. And it's because they went into pregnancy, a very beautiful yet depleting event, undernourished. They're not eating enough. They're not supporting their bodies with the nutrient rich foods. And then they, you know, it's just been normalized, like, you know, just feeling this way is normal. And that's just what you have to deal with. And I think I'm so passionate about it because it's just, it's not, it's not normal. And you don't have to subscribe to the mainstream advice that is being shared today. You can like set yourself up for a different story, and you can have a different outcome. So I think that's why I'm so passionate about it.
I definitely agree. And there was an episode I was listening to with Morley Robbins, who was speaking about how we get three things from our mothers. And he said one was the mitochondrial DNA, two was a download of minerals, especially copper and iron. And then if the mother is stressed, then the baby's going to be obviously stressed and be depleting through minerals like magnesium and potassium. So just knowing that things get transferred to the baby, I feel like you should be really working well before you decide to do the deed.
Truthfully, I didn't know that my microbiome was set by my mom. I had no idea that was passed through her vaginal canal. I had no idea until I became sick. I started like, you know, going down the rabbit hole of information and like learning all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh. And not only that, like, especially if you're a woman, you have a mom, and then your egg was sitting inside of your mom when she was in your grandmother's womb. So, like, what traumas did she go through? What was she exposed to in her life nutritionally? And luckily, I don't think our grandmothers were really exposed to that many of toxic substances like we're being exposed to today. Like really, that has just been more of a recent thing, you know, with the endocrine disruptors in our environment today and the plastics.
Food was obviously probably 100% better because they used to grow their own food. They used to have their own like little fields where they used to grow stuff. But so many things have obviously changed over the past like 7 years or something. So yeah, people are just definitely less stressed, not like go you know, like working endless hours trying to like no comparing to other people. It's just like all these other kind of stresses. It's just so many nowadays with like social media, and just like you're always able to see what's happening, what this person's doing, what's going on around the world as well. Like all these are like, obviously seeing what happens around the world can impact how somebody feels. If you just think, the world's changing, it's become a little bit,
I think the takeaway message is that we have a lot of control over our lives, more than we think. I know it does seem like a lot of things are being ripped away from us, but we can create safety within ourselves. And the question is, how can we take care of ourselves and create safety within our own home, within our own relationships, within our own community? Like, how can I do that so that I don't feel the overwhelm and thinking about the next thing that's going to happen in the world, and like the comparison trap that we fall into on social media? That there comes that discernment and drawing that boundary. So it's definitely not an easy process. I find that a lot of my clients do really well nutritionally, and they supplement well, and they do all those things very easily. That's what I did. I did it so well. I was like told by my functional medicine practitioner, they were like, "You're like our A+ student with nutrition." And I was like, "Thanks, but why am I not feeling well?" And so I had to like really connect the dots for myself and say, "Oh, okay. Yeah, like look at all these things I say about myself on a daily basis, like the self-talk that I have inside of my head." So it really is a lifestyle change and like a journey. But I did want to move on to the sodium potassium ratio, which is the sodium magnesium ratio, which is the adrenal ratio. So it's really interesting to see like someone's pattern and what kind of oxidizer they are, because you might have someone who is having really low thyroid issues and low adrenal issues, or you might have someone who has really low thyroid and high adrenal stress. So they might be in an acute phase of stress, or vice versa. Like there's so many different patterns. But again, that paints the story for them, like what's going on in their lives. And like, if they're in that acute phase of stress, that's good. Like you're catching this on now, and you're preventing, any potential worsened outcomes that may come of like the pattern that you're engaging in today on a regular basis. So yeah, that's the adrenal ratio. And where's the stress coming from? I also love adrenal cocktails. Do you drink your adrenal cocktails? Yeah. I drink about, I recommend like what I was saying earlier with clients like jumping too quickly into magnesium. I think 2 adrenal cocktails daily could be like the antidote and what they need to just kind of get them to where they need to be. So sometimes that might be helpful in really working on that sodium to potassium ratio, which is also an adrenal ratio. It's like a stress ratio. What's your vitality like? So that one tends to run low with a lot of women. And then your zinc to copper ratio is your female hormones ratio. It's insight to if they're imbalanced or not. Of course, it's not a Dutch test where you can actually see how everything is metabolizing, like how your estrogens are, like what pathways are they going down. It's not going to paint the picture like of what's exactly going on with hormones, but you could probably align with a lot of the symptoms that are related to zinc and copper imbalances, like acne, PMS, infertility, even like UTIs, incontinence. Like there's so many women, fatigue. So yeah, and then calcium to phosphorus is a sympathetic and parasympathetic ratio. Like what state is your body sitting in? Usually those who have fast thyroid function might be sitting in a sympathetic state, and those with low thyroid function might be sitting in a parasympathetic state. And then it also gives us insight into how like you're using protein. A lot of women who are slow metabolizers tend to lean more towards vegetarianism because they are not sitting well with red meat. So they tend to eliminate red meat from their diets, thinking that'll resolve a lot of the issues that they're experiencing. So they're not getting a lot of protein, therefore depleting stomach acid. So we can usually see low HCl with this ratio if phosphorus is low, and you are not assimilating any of those nutrients from the protein that you are taking in. So we know that protein is like foundational to creating hormones. And we know that we need glucose to create energy for those hormones. So without those things, like we're really bound for hormonal havoc. And of course, we're going to see imbalances there. And then, of course, we're low in progesterone, and it's no wonder that we're miscarrying and we're not able to sustain a pregnancy or can't conceive at all. So there's a lot of unlearning, as you can see in the mainstream advice that we've been led to believe, because we need to have certain nutrients in place as nature intended, as God intended, to be able to consume on a regular basis in a healthy manner, so that we're not depriving ourselves, we're not starving ourselves, we're in a nourished state, so that our body can feel safe enough to carry a baby. So that's kind of the breakdown of the ratios and the minerals that I would focus on. Zinc, potassium, copper. Copper is huge because, like you mentioned earlier, iron dysregulation, there's that seesaw. So they need to be like in balanced ratio with one another. Now, I don't think you can really see iron dysregulation alone on a hair tissue mineral analysis. That's when the full Monty iron panel comes in.
Definitely, yeah. That's super interesting. I feel like a lot of people wouldn't know about the importance of all these minerals and how they affect what you've just discussed, like the adrenals and the thyroid and hormones. So I feel like that's definitely something to just be aware of. And I guess even if you don't go ahead and do a hair tissue mineral analysis test, I feel like even trying to go that extra mile of making sure that you do get those minerals from food, rather than just going to the shop now and grabbing all those minerals, just like focusing on doing the best to get those minerals from food.
Yeah, and I think that like really brings it back to like everyone's looking for like a fertility diet. I don't like that. I don't like food labels or anything. And I think we should just be eating to support our body's metabolism and just nourish ourselves with foods that were recognized as food. And of course, that means elimination of processed foods. And what I often see happening is like, oh, I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, or I'm, God forbid, sugar-free. You're following like, oh, okay, is this approved? Like if it's a diet like Whole30, is this approved? Is this approved? Is this approved? It's like, yes, but where's the nutrition? Like that is what we need to look for. So what is nature's multivitamin? We look to liver, we look to oysters, we look to pasture-raised bone broths and eggs and just things that are supposed to be in our diets, but we, because of, again, mainstream advice, we have become fearful of these things. Eggs, like eat only the egg whites, where most of the nutrition lies in the egg yolk.
I feel like that's anyway. I love the egg yolk more than the egg white.
Exactly. It's like no wonder we were so starved and undernourished and craving these foods even more, because we deprived ourselves from them. So like when oh my God, I posted something on my Instagram account a couple weeks ago, like me talking to the camera about how I was a sugar addict. And like it's been hard to admit, and I've been in denial about it. And I just could not stop cringing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like cringe-worthy material. I cannot believe I shared that. Like I put that message out into the world, but only because it was shared with me. And I was like, because I thought sugar was bad, I would avoid it. And I was just like, I gotta have it. And I would just go crazy and like I would binge on sugar so badly. And so then, yes, of course, we're gonna blame the sugar, because after you did that, you felt like crap. So we need to unlearn these things. We need to biologically correct our bodies. We need to remove a lot of the stress from hard to digest foods like nuts and seeds, because we are overdoing those in excess. I think that's one of the major contributors in polyunsaturated fatty acids. And when we have more of those in our diets, we're going to have a difficult time at breaking down and digesting other foods. So we think it's that food. But I promise you, when you go to remove those hard to digest foods and loads of vegetables, you're going to have such an easier time reintroducing dairy and fats and things like that, animal products that are designed to give us and equip us with all of the nutrients that we need for optimal fertility, optimal sperm health, optimal egg quality, and just letting your body feel safe for once in its life and not having to stress about food. Don't let food become another stressor for you.
Yep, 100%. Literally. What other kind of foods would you touch on as being like depleting these kind of minerals? Obviously, we touched on processed foods. I feel like hopefully everyone knows that we should need to be cutting back on processed foods, just making sure that we're getting food with minimal ingredients. But I see a lot of people talking about how fruit and fructose is bad. But I feel like I don't know if it's because people are linking it with like sugar is bad, but we know sugar isn't bad, or is it because they're linking fructose with high fructose corn syrup?
Yeah. So exactly. And I think we have to like understand like why I don't recommend processed foods, even though it seems like a duh, like a given. You have to look at it's probably not the sugar in there. It's probably not. Of course, like you just said, we have to make sure that it's real sugar. It's not high fructose corn syrup, which is actually really just mostly glucose. It's super rich in glucose, and it's also a big copper depleter. If anyone didn't know that, like it's out to get your copper. So of course, avoiding high fructose corn syrup and artificial sugar. So when we look at these polyunsaturated fatty acids, they are going to also be incredibly addicting. And they are found in these processed foods, unfortunately, because they're cheap. They also were used in paints back in the day. And then all of a sudden, we just decided to put them in our food. And that's quite frightening. Unfortunately, a lot of restaurants also cook with these polyunsaturated fatty acids. For those who don't know what those are, think of canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, what else? Cottonseed oil, sunflower seed oil,
Rapeseed.
Rapeseed. Yes, thank you. There's a whole list of them, and
Like almond oil and all those kind of oils as well.
yes, peanut oil, things like that. So the bonds are not stable, and when exposed to heat, light, or oxygen, they are going to break and they're going to create inflammation within your body. They're going to create oxidative stress. Please stick to what your grandmothers used in their kitchens: lard, butter, coconut oil, tallow. Ghee is an awesome alternative if you guys aren't tolerating dairy well right now and working on that, because it's removed of casein and whey. I promise you, once you get those fat soluble vitamins in, like your body is going to just love you. And then like I think that alone is going to displace a lot of the polyunsaturated fatty acids that you have been consuming. So saturated fats are incredibly healing, and I think we need them for optimal hormone balance. So making sure we're taking in the right fats and not the fats that are found in these processed foods. Now, I think there is a time and place for the occasional like minimally processed food that contains like good quality oil. Like I'm trying to think, like there are some potato chips that are made with coconut oil, and it's just potato, coconut oil, and salt. That's processed, but it's minimally processed, and I say okay to that. It's fine. Same thing with avocado oil. I know that's like monounsaturated, and it's not like saturated, but I think there's a balance to everything. And having those occasionally in there as well, like tortillas that contain coconut oil. But there are also a lot of recipes to make these things at home too. So I think there is a fine balance with, yes, eating what our ancestors ate, but we're also not our ancestors. Like there are a lot of things that have changed since then. And, there's a lot to be grateful for. Like, yes, there are a lot of health food industries that exist now these days, but you do have to be mindful of, some of these things are becoming trendy. So you need to be aware of like, what the ingredients are. So I got into the habit of checking in food ingredient labels as soon as I needed to start being more mindful of my diet. And I just really got to know ingredients. Just think ingredients that you can read, ingredients that are not too long. You're not looking along at a long list of ingredients. And I think those processed foods can be okay in moderation, and just using your basal body temperature as a guide to and like your signs and symptoms as a guide. How did you feel? Are you making improvements and strides in your health? Like, is the foundation of your plate going to be nourishing? Is it going to, like, do you feel like you're doing your body a favor afterwards? Or was it mindless snacking, mindless eating? Were you disconnected from your food? Those are all things that come with time, and like chewing your food and sitting down with your plate and not eating in front of your desk and just like zooming your food into your mouth, that's huge. But like something as simple as that to correct your digestion. Like a lot of people are just mindlessly eating, and we're walking on autopilot a lot these days.
Definitely, that's so true. It's like in this fast pace, like everything has to be done. We have no time to like. There's no time to eat. There's no time to like. We don't give enough time for us to sleep. Like we just think sleep's for, people that are just lazy, and we have to grind and hustle. It's just like no.
Yeah, it's not what especially the female physiology was set up for. We are cyclical beings, and it's never linear. So especially as it pertains to our menstrual cycle, like I think we need to listen to the natural rhythms of our bodies. Like when we're on our period, are we running more low, and like honoring that and not having to push and keep up with the demand that society has kind of ingrained and embedded in us that we need to follow. So yeah, there's a lot to unlearn. But going back to your first question, sorry, I can go off in like so many different like la la lands. So I think you were talking about like why we're avoiding the certain foods for like fertility diets and like processed foods. So I think I answered that one, right? So as far as like other foods I would avoid, I mean, sometimes I think I saw a post of yours on this. I can't remember, talking about gluten.
Mhm.
So I think here's my stance on gluten, and I'd love to hear yours, because I have had this gluten intolerance since, like I said, 2016. Like I just had to stop eating gluten because it was not working out for me. I looked 6 months pregnant and I didn't know what was going on. Clearly I had a lot of digestive issues. So I knew I needed to give it up. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll just do it for like a few weeks, a couple months, and like I'll try it again. No, it did not bode well with me. And then even fast forward to the beginning of this year, I tried some sourdough, organic quality sourdough from a local farmer. It gave me a headache. I was sleepy, and I was so tired and had brain fog. That's what it was. I had really bad brain fog. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never felt this way, or like I haven't felt this way in a really long time. No digestive issues, so that's good. But I'm like, maybe my body just needs a little bit more time to be able to digest that, and that's okay. Like I have plenty of gluten-free alternatives, but we know that gluten is the only substance, not all the only substance, I don't want to say that, but it releases a substance called zonulin, and that is what keeps the gut lining tight, and it causes it to become leaky. So then foreign invaders come in through these tight junctions into your bloodstream, and then it creates inflammation. So I think that's very bio-individual. I know a lot of women who tolerate it very well, and they're doing well with it. It's not in excess, and they can tolerate the sourdough or the einkorn or whatever it is from time to time, and they do well with it. And I think, I don't know what your take is on this too, but I feel like it has a lot to do with like an ancestral background, and like what someone came from, like as far as like genetics and ethnicity and stuff.
Yeah, I think generally most people do tolerate fine. I think obviously it's how it's made nowadays. It's been sprayed. It's got iron fortification. I feel like it's not been made easy to digest. And I feel like obviously if you have gut issues, which probably, could have been passed down from generations, or if it could be because of thyroid issues, it affects the gut as well, or you're just eating too many like beans and nuts and all this hard to digest stuff, that I feel like it can just cause those tight junctions to like expand and allow gluten proteins to pass through. Since I avoided it, it's been like 3 months now, I think. That's how a lot of my symptoms are improved, because I think that's why I had really high thyroid antibodies, because since I avoided gluten, that's when things started to improve. Like I had really dry skin on my underarms. Had brain fog. I was really puffy, inflamed. Like my joints were hurting. I had so many symptoms, and within 2 weeks of avoiding gluten, these symptoms obviously alleviated, got better. So obviously, I'm not going to be like gluten free for like the rest of my life. I feel like it's until I've addressed that leaky gut, the gut issues, and like worked on, just working on the thyroid. I feel like that everyone can work on the thyroid, but we also have to be working on supporting the thyroid, blood sugar balance and all that. So that's my kind of stance. But generally, like you said, people do tolerate it just fine.
I agree. And going back to what you said, like our older generations were able to eat bread and butter and like it was no big deal. But now you go out to a restaurant and you're consuming, I don't know what that is. I don't think that's bread. It's so different. And I see so many women who are homesteading, and I love it so much with their chickens in the backyard. I was actually talking to my dad about this the other day. I was like, did my grandparents have chickens? And he's like, yeah, they did. And you know what? Now it's coming back around, and you are going to have your chickens, and like you're going to be making your own bread and, fermenting stuff. And like we used to do. I just think it's beautiful, like this circle of life, if you will. I think history does repeat itself. So yeah, I have hope for a future that we will start to see better quality products. And I think, that is the trend. I don't know if you've been noticing that there are a lot more like conscious and aware companies and brands that are coming out more and more and more, which makes me really happy to see. So.
Definitely agree. Like you said, I feel like we are starting to go back to doing, agriculture ourselves, of like having a land and growing things ourselves and having farm animals and getting our own eggs. And then we know what the chickens have been eating, the health of those eggs. So I feel like it is pretty much coming around, because I feel like we all just are coming to realize that the food industry isn't, I feel like a large proportion, like now, obviously, there is companies that are obviously thinking about what they put in their food and want to take care of people's health. I feel like there's a large majority, obviously, still that will always exist, that are just, doing things to make more money. And obviously they're paying people to do studies to be in favor for what they are selling. Like it's just so much that people have to be aware of, because not everyone is trying to take care of you and your health. So we have to be educated and do our own research to find places that we can buy things and even do things ourselves, like make our bread or, grow our vegetables or whatnot. I feel like people have to take that step to start thinking and taking care of their health, because no one is really going to do the work for them. Even if, like, for example, you have a coach, you have a health practitioner, they're also going to tell you, look, do this. They're going to educate you. But at the end of the day, you have to do the work. You have to want to change your diet. You have to want to reduce that stress in your life. You have to want to, whatever it is in that person's life, they have to make the move.
Can I just say, 100%, I agree with everything that you just said. I believe my health journey was the biggest spiritual awakening of my life. Like it really shook me to the point where I was like, okay, I have to wake up. Like I have to wake up and I have to take responsibility for my life. I can't keep living this way. It's not working for me. And I have dreams and aspirations and desires that I want to fulfill, and I can't do it if I feel sick. And like I said, becoming a mom was like one of the biggest dreams of my life, like ever since I was a little girl. So I knew I had to get healthy. And I'm glad that I'm like on this path to helping other women like feel the same way, because I know I've spoken to so many women who are like, I want to start this business venture, but I can't because I'm so tired all the time. I'm like, I know what that feels like. It's almost like I've like attracted those women into my practice because that was me 5, 6 years ago. I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to do all the things, but I just like physically couldn't. So like if that speaks to anyone, like I think you're totally worth like investing in yourself and just like taking charge of your health. There's so much information out there. Like educate yourself, become knowledgeable, and just like baby step it too. Don't get heady about it and change your life.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely just take it one step at a time. And like we said at the beginning of the podcast, like just because something so is made to be like it's normal to feel like tired all the time, or it's okay to feel like to have a missed period or not to have a period, or whatever the people are saying is normal. Just because something is so common doesn't mean it's normal. So, and like you said, there is a way to overcome certain things. You can, I guess we can say, like reverse diagnosis, and you don't have to label yourself as in like I have PCOS, so this is like forever. I'm just PCOS. Like my name is PCOS. It's like
No, I mean that and no, and I don't want to confuse that, because I think one of the things that saved my life, because I felt so alone in my healing journey. Everyone I looked around me, they were feeling fine. They didn't feel bloated. They didn't feel tired all the time. I was like, what's wrong with me? So that was one of the reasons why I spiraled, and like I tried to like diagnose myself with some crazy diagnosis until I found this community. And that's what you're doing for so many women, but and then that comes later on in the journey, like, am I labeling myself? And I mean, that's what happened to me, and that prevented me from taking the next step in my healing. I think community is so, so important, and it truthfully, like, it saved me to know that I wasn't alone, and that there are other people who think this way and other people who feel this way, and they're doing something about it, and we're all kind of just like trying to figure it all out, because it is hard to say that everything is settled. Like nothing is ever settled. And I think we're always going to acquire new things. And I think it's awesome that we have a community like this to be able to learn from.
100% agree. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about you just launched a new course, right, on period restoration.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Despina. I mean, we're recording this. I'm not sure when you're releasing it, but I have come out of a very stressful period of my life. I didn't know how stressed I was. I will tell you what happened. I'm talking about stress and depleters and stuff. I think as entrepreneurs, it's very hard to find your balance. I'm sure you feel the exact same way. And like no one else is going to do it for you. You need to like literally do it yourself. So it is a wild ride that I'm on right now, and I'm trying to find my rhythm. But you also get so excited about like your courses and whatever you're launching, and just spreading information. I think that's definitely one of my deepest passions. So period restoration is a mini course, although it's like almost 4 hours long, so I don't know how many it is, but there's a lot of good information in there, and just like helping women become acquainted with their cycles, because I speak to so many women that are like, a what? A follicular phase what? And cervical mucus what? And temperatures? How do you take those? Like there are so many women who don't know these things, and that was me. And I remember taking charge of your fertility a few years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a Bible. This is like a holy grail of fertility, and I can't believe I was never taught this in high school. And I think so many women are experiencing issues with their period, therefore experiencing issues with their fertility. And that's really what this course is for women who want to understand their cycles better, who want to conceive in the near future, and like just really feel healthy. And I make the connection that it's not just periods. Like we have to look at other things that are involved in that too. So yeah, it's a DIY passive mini course that you can purchase from my website. But so like going into what I've been doing these past 2 weeks, I have been like offline. I've just not been on Instagram. I've still been kind of working behind the scenes, but I cannot tell you like how much of a fresher breath air. Wait, what did I say? How much of a fresh breath of fresh air. Thank you. Like I can't even think that it has been. I logged off that day and I was like, I am so tired. I actually ended up developing this little rash on my chin. It's like we all have like herpes simplex virus type 1 that flares up when I'm really stressed. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh no, like that's coming out now. Thankfully, it's like healed just in time for me to go back. But I was like, wow, I really was like, go, 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 go. And although it was so beautiful, I just really needed to take that time and just like heal myself and just step back and just nurture and nourish and rest, which is kind of what I talk about in period restoration and everything that we just talked about on the show today.
I definitely agree that there is like phases in our life where we probably have to put down the gas a bit more, but then realize that you can't do that for a prolonged period of time, and knowing that after X amount of months, for example, I'm going to be taking it a bit easy to recover, to help those adrenals, replenish my body with those minerals that get, really depleted when you're stressed. So, but it's just, we need to know that there must be a balance of like not always being go, go, go. But I'm sure that the mini course or the medium course, if you don't want to
like an in between. Oh yeah,
be like really valuable and amazing. It's going to help their periods and just general overall health and well-being.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
How can our listeners connect with you? Where can they find the course? Where can they, what social media platforms are you working on or active?
Yeah. I know. I feel like when I just finished period restoration, I'm already thinking about the next thing. And I'm like, Kiara, can you just like love where you are right now? Love where you're at. So you can connect with me on Instagram at Kiara Marie Wellness. I will be on there next Monday, back to normal business hours. And you can also just learn more about the program and just more about me on my website at kiaramariewellness.com.
Awesome. I have everything linked in the show notes. Highly recommend following. So there's like just so much good information. If you like this episode, you're going to 100% love everything that is on Instagram or even in the course, 100%. So definitely go follow Kiara. I highly recommend. And I think that's about it. Do you want to like final word for our listeners to like wrap up, to have like a final tip or something to wrap up?
That's a really good one. I feel like I've had a lot of those moments, like just Phoenix moments on walks here in the past couple of weeks. Like it's really allowed me time to slow down. There is no finish line. There's no rush to get to from point A to point B. Like I want you to build intimacy. I think building intimacy in the moments where they seem so simple, so mundane. I just want to get this over with. I want this to be over. I want you to stop and build intimacy in the moments like eating your food and slowing down, because I think that's where the healing really lies. And it is like a spiritual component for me, because that is what truly has allowed me to slow down in a brain that's so chaotic and hectic, and I'm a worry wart and I overthink and things like that. If I just take a deep breath and create intimacy and breathe and slow down, I am guided, I am supported, I am held. And I think that is just one of the most beautiful things. So hopefully that resonates with someone today.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I learned so much. I'm sure our listeners have learned so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me. I'll have everything linked in the show notes to check out the course, the website, the social media. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Despina.